Hello, 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 hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good times, whatever time it is, and wherever you are listening. Joined with me, as always, Mr. Chris Q.
Cheers. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm cracking out, doing my thing.
And doing his thing. Talking of doing things, Jamie, you're doing lots of things at the moment, aren't you? Jamie Page?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit here and there.
Such an interesting guy, Jamie is. Riveting, Jamie.
I hope that's not setting the tone for the show, Jamie, because we have sort of a topic for the show tonight, and that sort of is about everything that's happening that you're doing. So I was kind of hoping you might have something more than to add to tonight's topic, but
yeah, there's been a few things happening in my workshop.
A few things. You painted the walls, new like.
Yeah, that's about the extent of what I was legally allowed to do.
Oh God, Richard, cover the sponsors. Let's get on with this thing.
Quick, change the subject.
It's going to drag on this badly.
Other things have been happening.
Let's at least get the obligation out of the way before we bore everybody to tears here.
Absolutely. So very quickly, as always, tonight's show is brought to you in part by Yorkshire Grit, the wood turners abrasive paste, our good friend Chad at Mancrafting, Pam from Highland Boxes, and our good friend Steve Harneal from Harneal Media, who does the website. Sorry, Jamie, everyone knows now. There's no point trying to blag it anymore.
Jamie does
we'll just have to pretend he doesn't even upload the show when he's supposed to. Apparently, he's already confessed to this evening. This is going to be like that. That's the whole.
This is going to be a fun hour.
I'm going to sit here with an awkward grin on my face.
If you want to find out more about our sponsors, then head on over to the website. That is makersinternationalpodcast.com/sponsors. And honestly, seriously, 100% hand on heart, Yorkshire Grit, Chad, the stuff that Chad does, Pam's Highland blanks, hybrid blanks, things like that, they are absolutely awesome. So if you don't know what they're all about, then honestly do go check them out if you're into that kind of thing, because they're really nice people and they do really nice stuff.
Yes, they do.
Have you guys been busy? I mean, Jamie, you've been busy this week. I've been doing a few things. Chris, have you been up to anything? I know you've been sort of how should we say, out of the workshop.
I have, and
project size,
and unfortunately, I continue to be just because of physical restraints. But I have been busy this week. It's just not doing anything that I want to do. With the fall coming, and I need to get ready for winter. I need to get ready to blow all the because I live in the. I don't know. You guys have seen footage of where I live, right?
You live like the loony that lives in the middle of the woods, aren't you?
Yeah. And so when the leaves drop all their trees, guess who gets to clean them up? Me. So anyway, that's not a small task. So what I try to do is I try to do it in stages, because there are certain species of trees that drop their leaves before other species of trees, and so I wait for the first species to drop them, and then I blow the yard, wait for the second one, and blow the yard. I mean, when I first moved here, I waited till they all came down. That was a mistake.
You're up to your waist in dead leaves.
Not even up to my Richard. I'm not kidding. Up to my. There's a picture my wife has somewhere. I'm standing in the middle of leaves up to my nose. I've got leaves in my backyard. So yeah. So it's just been kind of that kind of crazy stuff. Plus a lot of household things have been going on too. Like I have to replace a drain in a bathroom, and just all that kind of.
You could turn your backyard into like a roller coaster ride. Must be a certain height to clean it.
Well, my backyard would actually be like a mini little sledding hill that would end up onto an ice skating rink in the little creek that I have behind me. And then if you manage to get across that, you would be going up the side of another sledding hill. That would be kind of like a yo-yo thing that would happen in my backyard. If you ever got on a sled, you'd be laying down and we're going back up again.
Just talk about that. A few years ago, we just totally sidetracked here, but it's quite amusing. We went on holiday to Crete, and there was like a water park down the road from where we were staying. So let's go and do that. And I think the first ride we went on was one of those kind of giant U-shaped like half pipes. Mm-hmm. But you went in it on, it was a water park. It was they got water going over the edge, so it was all completely wet. And you went over in one of those big rubber donuts. So you're sitting on this donut, and they just launch you off what just feels like a sheer drop, and you just go down. And then up the other side, and it didn't matter how large or small the person was, whether it was a large grown up or a small child. You went about the same height, because obviously physics and stuff.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, I'm going to fly off the top. I'm going to fly off the top. And then you just get to the top and you could just see over. And then you go back down again. It's, oh, thank God for that. It's one of the scariest rides I've ever. Cause it wasn't the hoopy thing. It was just the falling off the edge. It's just like.
That's not like that's a lot like bungee. Have you guys ever bungee jumped?
No, that's one thing I wouldn't bother doing.
Oh my! Oh, I did, and I did it from a really, really, really tall crane. I was actually live on the air when I did it. I taped a microphone to my hand so the listeners could experience it, and that was a that was holy. I had to. I mean, the FCC was listening, and I didn't, but I wanted to. But it's one of those things where you drop and you go down so far, and I actually managed to get the ends of my fingers to touch the sand on the beach, and then I went straight back up. And you think you're almost going to get back up to the platform where you were, and then no, not really. You go back down again, and you bounce for like 5 minutes. It was fun.
Just imagine you tied to a bungee rope like a cat. You know, when a cat's trying to like arms and legs everywhere. Imagine that was Chris.
That was me. But it was and unfortunately at the time, it was just back when my mother was still alive. She actually just tuned in to hear her lovely son on the radio, and she heard me just as I was jumping off the stage. I think I may have taken a few years off of her life that day anyway.
Sounds like it took a few of yours.
No, actually, I really enjoyed it because I'll be honest with you, because I was really up so high. It was like a 7 to 8 story hotel, and this crane had me above that hotel. I was looking down on the roof of that hotel when I jumped. I mean, the people down were like little people, so I was afraid to jump at first, and so but I didn't have a choice. I was live, and I was like, you can't chicken out. You got to do it. But after I did it, I wanted to do it again, and they wouldn't let me. I was kind of ticked off. Anyway, so on that note of sheer idiocy, let's but extremely fun. Let's move on,
because we sort of have a topic, don't we? We're talking. Was it Workshop 2.0 or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sort of.
So this sort of came about as an idea. What was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were chatting? It was sort
something
of
like that. Yeah.
It was still while I was off doing other things, but we do occasionally talk in between the shows. When we say talk between the shows, Chris messages us and says, "We need a topic. Tell me what the topic is," and then we come up with a few ideas, and then we all forget about it, and then Chris
until the Saturday.
Well, I'll tell you exactly how this works, because Richard kind of sugarcoated that a little bit. I do ask for, gentlemen, all right, Sunday's coming up. We need to find a topic. And then what do you guys want to do? And then Jamie will chime in, then I will chime in, and then Richard would say, no, that's crap. We're doing it my way. And we end up doing what Richard wants to do every week. Which is pretty much
that's not quite how it.
Jamie, am I lying? Am I
not
lying?
Wrong.
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Oh, you make it sound like it like.
No, it's a dictatorship.
Lying
really?
Lying is such a horrible word.
Hi, Mr. Morley. Yes, I mean, we honestly we end up settling on what Richard says most of the time, just because Jamie and I don't want to fight about it. And Richard gets nasty when he gets.
I feel really bad now. I'm genuinely. Oh, guys.
Chris wanted to talk about scroll saws, but
I did. I had scroll saws laid out as another topic, a part 2 of that. But no,
you have to draw the line in the sand somewhere, don't you? I mean, there's got to be like.
We've even got chat proof of it. Chris suggesting it.
We were going to have a scroll saw going in the background for an entire hour. It would have been fantastic, but no. Anyway,
it's not that kind of show, Chris.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. SoundCloud. Yeah, sorry. Audio show, Chris. Audio show. Remember that. Remember? Okay. So, anyway, no, Workshop 2.0, and we do have questions, but if you want to, kind of set this up, then go for it.
Well, I genuinely want to know, because I actually wanted to know what Jamie's doing in his workshop, and this is where the idea for me came in, as to because it was like, Jamie, what are you doing? There's a few painting the walls, and all of a sudden his workshop's empty, and the lathes underneath an old potato sack or bed sheet or something, and there's paint everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing in your workshop, Jamie? And then you sort of told us, and then with Chris talking about rearranging a few things in his workshop, and how I'm sort of working, because my workshop's kind of, I don't want to say not suitable, but there's a few things that I've never bothered changing that I need to change with the sort of work that I'm doing at the moment, and it just was this kind of evolutionary thread of an idea that we could maybe talk about this evening? I mean, starting off with Jamie, what are you doing in your workshop?
So it kind of going back through the years. My workshop's always had little changes over the years, and then obviously I had big problems with the roof leaking and all that kind of stuff. And then the leak just got completely bad to the point where the roof just collapsed. So
that's kind of a problem.
Big problem.
Unless you like the rain, if you like the rain, then
unless you like the rain, I like the rain, but I like my tools even more.
That's true.
So first of all, we replaced the whole roof on the outside, and then it was kind of a whole rewire, make it so it's not a fire hazard.
Which is what it once was.
I know. Since Dale from Maple Tree Studios joined the community, he's been like, that wall needs to be right, and I'm like, well, you don't have to keep reminding me about it every 6 months. He's like a wife.
Way to go, Dale. Way to go, Dale.
Was this there's a hole in the roof and I need to fix it?
Yeah, it was always like the water coming through weren't. It was always kind of like I could just take a heat gun and just sort that out for a little while, and then it kind of got patched up, and the patch up weren't good enough. It stopped it temporarily, and then all of a sudden it got to the point where it was like, there's no more patching this up, no way.
But what I meant did this start off as I'm just going to fix the roof and there was no intention to do anything other than fix the roof, or did you get halfway through it and then be like, do you know what, sod it, I'm going to do this, and now I'm going to do this, and then it just was suddenly
it all of a sudden became, right, if we're going to fix a roof, it's time to do the lot.
Dale's in the chat. He's hashtag white walls for Jamie. I was thinking more like hashtag white jacket for Jamie, but you go with that however you want to. Anyway,
with straps around the back.
Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
So all of a sudden it became once we started doing the roof, all of a sudden everything needed to be done. Just all of a sudden pay out loads and never have to do it again. So that became the start of a lot of expense. A lot of empty wallet days. But it's nearly there, and there's going to be some good things coming out of there soon. So
you claimed. Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say. So you've got a new roof. I mean, that's kind of a necessity, but it's not really one of the exciting things that we all think of when we talk about.
No, so it's not a new. It's got a new roof on it. So it's obviously the bitumen on top, the felt, and all new. It's got new plywood, so it's all been rebuilt up on all that kind of good stuff. It's the inside though. That's where the fun starts happening. So now it's been treated electrically, which is obviously I can't have anything to do with. So I'm actually going to do like a live stream after it's all finished and get everyone in that's helped me along the way to do it. So all the electricals has all been done. So now the workshop and the garden is separate from the house. So it's got its own fuse box now as well.
I was going to say that's a fairly major electrical upgrade to what you had before.
Yeah, so that's all been done. It's got Wi-Fi in there. So all the Wi-Fi cables run there. So that all needs the final connections putting in there. And that's all going to be in. So that means there'll be Wi-Fi in the workshop, Wi-Fi in the garden. So eventually I'll have a computer in the workshop as well to do the work. To do that, there's going to be a heater put in there. This little dehumidifier going off down there will be going off in there because it was still a bit damp out there.
Jamie's going to have the shop of envy from now on when he's done.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, I've obviously seen I knew about the roof and that you having a bit of electrical work done and the painting and the rest of it, but I didn't realise you were having like full on new.
It's kind of a case of getting everything off of the floor. Really, there's going to be a lot of shelvings. There's Huey Lionheart, who's on YouTube as well. He's making me a couple of like trolleys. I'm trying to get everything on casters.
Yeah.
as well, which is obviously a big thing for a small workshop.
Casters are one of those things. Like if you go to YouTube, type in, search for workshop tours or workshop upgrades or anything like that, everything, put it on casters. Everyone says, "I'll put it on casters."
Yeah.
And I remember watching those for years, going, "Yeah, that's a good idea," and never actually doing it. And then once I was like, "Oh, I'll get some casters," and I was like, "That's amazing. That's like the best thing." And it's like
everything in my shop is on casters, and I'll tell you this much: I don't skimp on the casters either, because you want good casters, especially if you're carrying heavy tools like my drill press. I have a router table. I have my table saw. Thankfully, came with them. My sanding station, and it's because I have limited, and unbeknownst to Richard, I have a limited amount of space I can actually work in. And I need to be able to roll tools into that space and then roll them out of that space. It's kind of like my workshop is always in flux, depending on what I'm doing. You know what I mean? But I have a space for everything, and everything has its space. And I need them to
space.
I need them to have ease of movement. And if you cheap out on casters, you're going to hate yourself for doing it. I mean, buy good ones.
I did exactly that with my table saw. I mean, if you look back on my older videos, that the table saw sat right in the middle, and I had these little 2-inch diameter wheels.
Oh my god!
And there was only 2 of them as well, because the idea was like pick up one side like a wheelbarrow and like drag it on the wheels. And I never moved it. It never moved anywhere. It always stayed in the same place. And what I didn't realize, like when you've got a trailer or a car that sits in a barn for 20 years and never moves, what happens to those tires? They're literally flat at the bottom.
Yep.
And I moved it for the first time, and it just went as it got around, and then you drag it about 3 inches, which is the circumference of the wheel, and then it go kaboom, back on the flat spot again. Like, yeah, that's not working so well. So I ended up having to get like a whole load of big. So what Chris said, good casters, and if anyone's got good casters, the tool station, believe it or not, Jamie, you can get like lock-in ones and non-lock-in ones, 3 and 4 inch diameter, and they're relatively cheap compared to other places.
And here in the States, if to go along with that, to be honest, it's one of the only things I'll recommend the store for people that are serious about things for long-term use, because it's the only thing in this store that I found that is worth buying that will actually have long-term uses. Harbor Freight for casters. If you buy the upgraded version of their casters, they're cheaper than you'll find them anywhere else, and they actually are quality casters. So if you're looking for an income-friendly caster, then go to Harbor Freight. Don't buy the cheap ones they have there. Buy the ones that are the most expensive ones they have there. And trust me, they're still going to be cheaper than the expensive ones you'll find online. Get them, and then you'll be fine. And normally they're urethane, so they move easily. And if you've got little divots in your shop, they go over them real easy, as opposed to the other ones that just kind of like you got to pull the darn thing over through whatever it is. They're really nice. So that'll save you some bucks, save you some pennies anyway.
Yeah.
So, how close to finishing are you with I mean, I say finish, never, because obviously things are never finished. But
it's still got to put some battening up to kind of seal the roof in. A little bit of painting on the roof, some shelves, new tool wall. Got to put the new window in, and that's really kind of about it as far as I can think. I would need to wire in the Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff.
But presumably those are all things that can happen whilst it's in use, rather than you can't do any.
Oh yeah. I've been using so my video that's out at 11 o'clock tonight. Just before Kate's video.
Good segue.
11:15.
So presumably, if people are listening to this podcast now afterwards, that'll already be up on your channel to watch.
That'll already be up. Yeah.
So the endless plug. Plug.
I actually turned that when was it, a couple of days ago. So
so you're now showing videos of your new
of the new view where it'll be.
Okay.
Yeah. So
well, I don't want to leave the people that are actually here with us today live out of this, because honestly, and we say this and we say it in all seriousness all the time, but I'm saying it in all seriousness once again. If you're doing some things in your shop, and tell us what you're working on, what are you doing? What are you moving? What are you thinking about building? because we don't want to keep this focused on us. I'd like to hear from you folks. If you guys have something major or even, somewhat minor that'll just make your life easier, share it with the people that are with us. And we'll try to share it live here so that people can maybe take a hint or two from what you're doing. And then, they can be, what you're learning, maybe coupled with what, we don't know. Because trust me, there's a lot we don't know. But we have.
I'd just like to make a point. I actually would like to keep it focused on me. However, I will concede that that's probably not a good thing.
We have questions. We have questions from
there's questions.
Mr. Andy Pugh, of course, our resident inquisitor. And I'll hit you with the first one. And Jamie, you've already answered yours because yours is still ongoing. But Richard, I'll ask this and I'll tell you mine after you're finished. How many times have you made significant changes to your workshop?
I mean, I couldn't put a number on that, but lots and lots of times. I mean, if you go back on my channel and watch one of my videos from 6-7 years ago, you can appreciate how much glass there is, because it's just a glass fishbowl, because you can see straight out the back and you can see the fence that was there and the pond that was there and all the world. Now those things have been added. It's gone from, I built a workbench in there, then I built one to go next to it, put billet drill on, and things just kind of got built up, and then a tool wall, and it just sort of got closed in. So loads of kind of major upgrades. But I think go ahead. I think the biggest upgrade I have is yet to come, because for the last maybe 3 years now, possibly even more, quietly in the background of things have been happening to effectively move out of that space and into a purpose-built workshop of a slightly bigger size, not massively, but square, like a big shed, probably 8 by 14 ish, something like that off the top of my head. So a little, maybe 10 by 16 if I can get away with building it that big without a cat noticing. Did I say that out? Edit that bit out, Chris.
She's not with us anymore anyway. She left.
No, I think she's doing the soup now. But
good. You got to end just in time.
Yeah, I got away with that. I think I got away with it. So that'll be obviously a big advantage, because I'll have wall space. So I've got, for the last few years, plans to do that. But aside from that, the biggest upgrade is actually make space, which I kind of spoke about in the We're Not on Patreon after party freebie for people that don't pay, because we don't do it after the live show last week. You
have to figure that out, but go ahead.
Yeah, maybe play that back at half speed and make notes. You know how you always hear, if I had all those tools, I could make that if I had a £20 million laser with a CNC 5-axis mill and blah, 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 as well. You've read all those comments. A lot of people have had them. I kind of thought, if you want to 3D print something and you haven't got a 3D printer,
it's hard.
It's not hard to find someone with a 3D printer. It is actually accessible in terms of knowing people and things out there. And I've got to give thanks to Jamie Reeder from the Custom Cave, and also to Chris Smith, the Wood Engineer, the Mad Maker, because they're both members, I believe, of Hack Spaces and Make Spaces, or have been in the past. And they just went, why don't you just go and find a Make Space? And they put me in touch with one, and I joined, and it's a bit bigger than Chris. I mean, it's that big. It's bigger than Chris's workshop. I mean, this is huge. It covers 4,000 square feet, and there's loads of cool tools in there that you can get trained on and use. So for me, that's at the moment, that's my biggest upgrade, because it effectively means I've got another workshop I can use if I can go there and do all that sort of stuff.
Have you figured out how to use the scroll saw yet?
There is a scroll saw. Do you know what? They've got 2 really awesome scroll saws. They're
Oh, we're ending that right now, so just be quiet.
Honestly,
No. I don't want to hear about it. Just be quiet. Jamie, please do me a favor. because we have to move on with the show. But I don't want to neglect these people that have chimed in with what they're doing with their shop. I want to get them involved today too. And I believe Wayne the Wood Turner kicked it off, and we've got a whole bunch of them. So if you can keep track of those, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to move on to my shop real quick, Richard, just because you were headed in the wrong direction. Significant changes, Andy, to my shop.
Hang on a minute. I moved in the wrong direction. I said it was bigger than your workshop, and it's 4,000 square feet. If that's the wrong direction,
you said scroll saw. You said scroll. Just shut up, Morley. All right, come on. Because you don't need a big. You don't even need a workshop. You get a kitchen table with the freaking scroll saw. Give me a break. Significant changes I've made to my shop. Okay, everybody who has a scroll saw, please don't hate me, but I mean that is the God's honest truth. If you have a kitchen table, you have a workshop. I would say the last significant change I made was when I bought my table saw, and it was nothing more than rearranging the tools that we've already talked about that I had on wheels into a position that would help me better pull the table saw out and use it and put it back when I wanted to. So that would be the last one. But my workshop itself, unfortunately, hasn't changed in 15 years for the most part. My workbench has always been where my workbench is. I mean, other than the tools, everything I have on wheels, I've moved those around, but I don't know that would be significant. Not in the true sense of that word. I mean, I have made storage cabinet for excess overflow of finishes and things of that nature that I use. So I did have that. I made the addition of a lathe bench that I had to put in when I bought my lathe, but
that's fairly significant.
Well, that's fairly significant. Yeah, that's that takes up. Let's be honest, that takes up quite a space. But that would be the last significant change I think I've actually made. Would have been that lathe bench that I built and installed. And it's still where it was the day I bought it. If anybody's ever seen the video, I did, and trust me, I know not many of you have. I've seen the views on it. People saying, I don't care, Chris. Whatever. Cute, put out a video. Let's just scroll on by. Anyway, but it's still in the same place that it was on the day that I built it. So, and that's another thing that's one thing that isn't on wheels. I had it originally on wheels. I did. I actually built it on wheels. Then I had a better think about that, thinking it was a lathe, and that a lathe on wheels probably might not be a good call unless you really had some spectacular locking wheels. I mean, and I didn't have any at the time, so I took the wheels that I had on it off, and then it's now sitting on the floor.
I'm quite a big fan of not putting an actual workbench on wheels and having that.
Yeah, my other bench isn't on wheels either. Yeah, my other workbench is actually bolted to the wall and then bolted to the floor. That thing's not going anywhere. So yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that. Now, Jamie, we had a bunch of people chiming in with what they're doing. Let's hear about that. If we have our 2 cents, we can chime in with maybe helping them.
So Wayne the Wood Turner says he's got some new lights going up tomorrow and a new rig for the monitor and some cameras. So if people don't know, Wayne does regular live streams over on his channel.
Lighting is always a good thing to add to a shop if you need it. I mean, really, you can't do better than that.
Big time. So Scott the Blue Light Turner, he's one of the people responsible for the electrics in my workshop and helping me out. He says, thanks to some of the community, I've been able to redo the roof on the extension of his workshop. That's getting changed into a clean work area for 3D printing, laser engraving, and pyrography.
Nice.
So that's awesome.
And that's quite a significant. If you're into kind of clean and dirty
workspaces, right?
Workspaces.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Jake was talking about having a clean room for resin. I mean,
a resin room. Yeah.
I think we all wish we had Norm Abrams' kind of finishing room, little spray booth on the side.
That's it, yeah.
Mine is outdoors. Yeah, mine is actually outdoors. I don't finish anything in my shop. I do it outdoors.
Yeah. Yappy, who's I can't remember, don't know how to pronounce his poltergeiter wood turning. He says, my biggest problem is my wife thinks my garage shop is her storage place, so I gave her advice and she didn't like it.
Is that I mean, you were talking about this the other week, weren't, or a couple of weeks ago, Chris? The cardboard boxes in the workshop that just kind of get dumped in there. I know, Jamie, you had the same because the
freezer,
yeah, that's it. I remember your mum coming in for some frozen duck wings or something for the dog when we were in there turning one time.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's life, isn't it? That's just
Yeah. Well, it's not in there no more. Cost me £400, but it's not in there no more.
Sometimes that's money well spent, though, my brother.
Oh, it is very,
Absolutely.
very
And
much money well spent.
I 100%. I mean, I've said this so many times that people are probably sick of hearing it. I'm genuinely so grateful and appreciative of being able to have effectively Cat's Conservatory to dump all my wood and sawdust in, which, to be fair, has kind of overflowed into her craft room as well. But so far, I've got away with it. That's not always the case, and there's so many people having to share their workshops with bikes and lawnmowers and hose pipes and rakes and garden. Yeah, and that's just life. I think for me, I always used to struggle when I first sort of started properly getting into woodworking at home and being able to do it as a hobby. You watch the videos and you see these really cool workshops, and we've all seen them on YouTube already. It's almost a bit like what's the word?
God, I wish they had that space. Yeah,
envious, not just of the space, but just of the fact that God, I wish I didn't have to park the car in there. I didn't have to put the lawnmower in there, and it's like, I can. At the same time, I think I'd be a good advocate of just being grateful with what you've got.
Yep.
That makes sense. Of not being like like our parents always were.
Well, unless
be grateful of what you've got and not what you want.
Well, I'll give a caveat. Unless you have the means to change it, don't complain about it. Because if you have the means to change it and you're too lazy to change it, then you shouldn't be complaining about it. Be grateful for what you have. But if you have the means to change it, then get off your butt and go do what you have to do to change it. I mean, it's like sorry, there's no wiggle room there, pal. I mean, you can complain all you want.
That's a sort of a delicate line to tread, but absolutely. I mean, it's just grateful for. I mean, I am 100% genuinely grateful for what I've got, and it's taken 3 years to be into planning. I'm still not there for actually spade in the ground, but if you really want it to.
That's one of those things, though, Richard. Like, because you're talking about I'm guessing you're talking about a wood frame building.
Oh yeah, I mean, it would just be like a garden shed, basically.
I'm telling you, as soon as the posts go in the ground, because you're gonna line them with cement and things of that nature to make sure they're in there and they're not.
I'm tempted to do concrete foundation around the ring, and then maybe a couple of courses of block work or brick, and then stud onto that. So
once you get the ground done, I'm telling you that thing will be done in a hurry, because that's going to be the project you want to finish the most.
Absolutely.
It will get done, but getting started on that kind of thing is what takes the most amount of time.
And there's always something, we could order the timber for this, or I could do this, and there's always something gets in the way, and it's it's life gets in the way, and all the rest of it. But when you've got that kind of goal, I mean, I can remember Jamie talking years ago about wanting to do the roof and wanting to do this and plans. We've all got the plans. It's just it takes a while to.
Because I've honestly thought about building a shop on my own properties, because I mean I have the room to do it, but the problem with that is getting it started, and you'd have to know the grading of my property that I live on. I mean, it would take bulldozers to come in here to give me a level spot to actually build on, because I don't have one outside of the platform of my house. The rest of it is all either going downhill, or there's a big boulder here, or thing, so it would take a considerable investment just to get started, and that's kind of held me off on doing that.
That kind of takes us on to a really good question that Andy asked on the Makers International Facebook page. Actually, we've sort of already kind of, I think, alluded to it, but Andy's asking if aliens came along and used a super intense swapping ray on your shop, but gave you the choice of whose shop you could have, no concerns about size or anything, whose shop would you want?
Me personally, I would go for Dale Maple Tree Studios. I wouldn't want anything massive, because it'd just be irrelevant, and I'd end up losing everything. Dale's got everything perfectly where you want it. He's got a scroll saw, he's got a lathe, he's got just the right amount of tools that you need.
Well, you know what I would say? Somebody mentioned this in the chat earlier. Once you think that you have the space is big enough to put a shop in, you're going to be wrong. go bigger. And I, be honest with you, I happen to agree with that. So if I was going to swap shops with somebody, if I don't want to take anybody's shop away from them that they have, okay, you keep your space. But if I could clone it and put it on my property, it would probably be the barn that DeResta built, because I could put all of my tools in there, and there would be plenty of room for expansion. And I have a lot of ideas for tools that I'd like to get that I just don't have room for. I mean, that's kind of what's held me back on buying a lot of stuff, is because I don't have either the correct wiring in my shop, or I just don't have the space for it. And it would be nice to have room, go into a shop, set things up to where it's workable for you, and know that you have room to expand should the need arise. And if that need never arises, then like DeResta's place, I mean, I might use only 25% of that. But you want to talk about clean rooms, you've got all that room back there to make, finishing room, painting room. You've got your 3D CNC, machine room. I mean, you would have plenty of space to do that. But that's, if it didn't cost me any money and I could do it tomorrow, that's what I would do. If it's going to cost me money, then I'm never going to do that, because I'm not going to spend that amount of money.
David Jones of Portal Woodwork says he has a 3,000 square foot shop, and he still needs more room.
Well, depending on what kind of work you do, that's possible. I mean, it really is.
I genuinely think it doesn't matter how big you end up with, you fill it. Just think of,
it's not hard.
Your bedroom as a kid, as a teenager, and then you move out, you get somewhere, and by the time you've gone into a 3 or 4 bedroom house with a garage or whatever you've got, it's all full of clutter, isn't it?
Well, it's like anytime. No, I don't know how many folks have actually moved their household in the past. I've moved my entire whole household 3 times. And I can tell you that on the day of moving, when you're loading that last thing in the truck and you go back into the house, you look in the rooms, you go, man, that room really looks big now. It's like this room has a lot of space, and yet you're sneaking by drawers and friggin' the bed, and but when it's all in there, but yeah, if it looks big, get it bigger. That's all I'm saying. And I apologize for whoever said that, because I would like to credit you for saying that, because that's a great point.
See, Andy Heel over at AH Bespoke is saying he's just in the process. Where has it gone? He's working on something large. It's kind of he's basically redesigning his workshop. I know he moved house recently, or in the last 12 months or so, but he's basically spent the last 4 years building up a massive collection of tools, to the point that it looked like a hoarder's workshop. An actual hoarder's workshop. So he's selling stuff off and kind of downsizing. And I've kind of been thinking along similar lines, things that I don't use. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When the space in which a tool or an item takes up becomes more valuable than the thing that's taking up the space, it's time to go. Because absolutely, space is the most valuable commodity, certainly for me in my workshop.
Let me ask you a question, I'll just ask you straight up and see what you and see what Jamie says. What is the least utilized space in virtually every workshop?
Up the top, massively.
The ceiling. Yeah, and there's tons of storage ideas to do for your ceilings.
Although, to be fair, I think in next door, that's probably the best utilized, because I don't have any wall space. I've got I can't hang anything on the walls. It's only about 3 foot. Yeah, probably not even 3 foot wide. And the bandsaw's up against that, so there's only a little bit of room where I've got some clamps hanging. Apart from that, there's no kind of wall space at all. So the things that you see in the videos that look like a tool wall, that's actually a cabinet that's fixed into the studs on the top of the workbench.
Right.
It's all one big unit.
When a ceiling comes into place, I don't think people utilize that space because they're worried that whatever they put up there is going to fall and hit them on the head. And I don't know the honest to God reasons for that, because honestly, I'm guilty. I mean, because I have my walls, besides the lighting, my ceiling, besides the lighting that I have up there, there is nothing up there. And every time I go out in my shop and I look, really need to move this. Where do I have room for it? I always think last about, build something for the ceiling to put it in, because I have room there, but I never utilize it. So anyway, it's just food for thought for anybody looking to make some more room in their shops.
I used to have like a scissor arm gantry dolly thing. You know, like the arms that desk lamps and these mics are on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I built one of those on like a dolly because there's a big aluminium girder that runs across the ceiling, and I clamped it around there on bearings so it would slide along and then it would move and pivot, and I could basically have no tripod in the workshop, which was great. But that was back when I was using my phone as my primary camera. As soon as I got a DSLR, it was too big and too heavy. It would just see my camera shots would just keep doing that as the weight of the camera arm would drop as it would sag.
No, here.
So I took it all out, and I ended up, I've got one of those, you know, the air scrubber cleaner box things, the fan with the filter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got one of those up in the top there, and there's now just like quick clamps, just gripped onto that
All around
bar.
that works. I mean, we do utilize the space if we can.
We
all right,
do
last
that.
and Andy, we've
Drink.
skipped a couple of questions. I think only because we've already covered them. But he has one last one, and I'll ask it. And if you don't mind, I'll answer first. His answer is, what advice would you give to someone setting up a workshop for the first time? My advice would be, don't let Andy Pugh ask you any questions.
Yeah.
Just freaking get out there and do it. Because the whole alien thing with the super intense swapping ray, Andy, I don't know what
cool.
you're
I
putting.
thought that was good.
I don't know what you're putting in your tea these days, my friend, but give me some of that. It's like, I don't know if he's on a Star Wars binge or if it's just okay, whatever. It's a little hey, a little gin never hurt anybody, Andy, but you got to the point where you may have had a few more than you should have.
The thing is, though, you know that the super intense swapping ray that he's talking about. You know what that sounds like, don't you? It goes pew 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 pew.
Pew pew pew. Oh, I see how. Richard made a joke. Richard made a joke. Richard made a joke. Everybody laugh. Okay.
Come on! How did you not make that? How did you not? Everyone was thinking. I just said it.
I'm actually going to pass on a bit of advice that Dale from Maple Tree gave us with regards to my workshop, and it's basically just get a chair or a stool, sit out in your workshop, and just look around and sit and think about where you want stuff.
Mine was going to be very similar to that, actually. But go on.
And basically, it may change every now and again over the weeks or even months that you're deciding on where you want stuff. But eventually, you'll get a final plan.
In an ideal, I think in an ideal world, and this doesn't really work for people that are working in really small shops, because in a small shop, you've just got to make things fit wherever they're going to freaking fit and make it work. I mean, so it doesn't really work for this idea. But if you have a larger space, and it doesn't have to be much larger, then one thing I would and I agree with Jamie and Richard, pull the chair in the middle of the room, and you know the tools that you have. And then you know the tools that are next on your list that you want because you need them, then sit down on that chair and envision them in the room, but envision them in a workflow manner. What is the first tool I'm going to use? My table saw. Okay, the table saw goes here. Then what am I going to use after that? Maybe a planer, maybe my miter saw, and then that goes over here. And if you start at 6 o'clock on a clock and you go all the way around to back to 6 o'clock again, you'll have a shop that is set up for workflow, so that your finishing will end up being across the room from your starting point. And that's only because it helps you not do a lot of back and forth in your shop while you're working. It makes things much more easy and much more accessible, because if you set your shop up that way, it can actually be more productive. And it's not that, look, it doesn't take me 2 seconds to walk from one side of my shop to the other to get a box of screws. But if that box of screws is sitting right above what I'm working on, then it takes no time at all. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So think about that if you have the space. If you don't have the space, then set it up as neatly as you can that you think you can work with. But envision it before you do it. That's all I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a small space, and Jamie probably in a similar sort of position. I never think about workflow at all, because
I do all the time, really.
But
You haven't got far to go.
But that's what I was going to say. I know. I mean, we were talking genuinely seriously before we went on air about, you've got a 2-car garage that's 20 odd by 20 odd feet square.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's a relatively decent space. You've literally got to walk across the room to get to the other side, haven't you? Whereas
Yes.
I don't even have to take a step barely, and Jamie doesn't. Jamie can literally just turn on the spot.
I
and
can't
touch the wall.
even I can't even put my arms out like that on one part of my workshop.
And that's why I said for a smaller shop, it makes no sense. But if you have a space,
100%. So I've never considered that at all in terms of I'll put that there. I'll put that there because that's where it fits, and it's not a big problem. I think my advice to somebody setting up a small space is accept the fact that that's the space you've got. That's for me that's the most important thing. I can't go outside these walls. I can't go up above the ceiling. Just got to be clever in the space that I've got. Your most important, or my most important commodity in that space is the empty floor space.
Yep.
Because when you move something from one place to another, it's not just as simple as just drag the table saw out and move it over to there. Because if there's something in the way, that's got to be moved out of the way, and you end up playing. You know those little plastic games you get with like the numbers 1 to 10, and
you got to sort them and get them in the right area.
Those little slidey things. That's exactly what you end up doing. And if you get to the point where I've got to move that to get to that to move that, you won't do it. And that's when accidents can happen, because I can't be bothered to go and do that. I'll do this.
I'll try to wing it on a tool that shouldn't be doing it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Or
I'll use the bandsaw or do it on a table saw.
If you don't try and wing it on a tool and potentially be dangerous, what you do is you kind of half-ass a step, and then you end up with a half-assed project, because then you end up not enjoying it. And the whole point for a lot of us to be doing these things is to enjoy what we're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, then
what's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just be smart. I just think that if I can keep everything just out to the sides, out of the way, so I can enjoy being in there and not get stressed about having to move things backwards and forwards. I know that's easier said than done. I genuinely get that, because some people are. I mean, look at his name eludes me. Stephen, 8x6 Workshop.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that standard British garden shed. Andy Pugh in the Tinkerage. I mean, that's about 4.5 square inches of space that he's got. And if you look at his shop tours, the amount of stuff that he can cram in there.
And organize, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so he's not ripping down 8x4 sheets of plywood and building Adirondack chairs in there. But
he can build the pieces up to them, though, and then assemble outside if he wants to.
He can do stuff. And you look at Joe. Joe's got a small shed. He's in a bigger small shed now, but he does a lot of his cutting out in the garden. He does a lot of his assembly out in the garden. Dave the wood barber, he used to wheel his lathe out into the garden when it wasn't raining and turn stuff in his garden. So that's another option.
Well, you had Matt Brander as well. He just done it in his kitchen.
He had his lathe in his kitchen. He actually used to give him crap about this, Jimmy. I don't know if you remember back in the day. He had a lathe in his kitchen, and he actually drilled a hole in the middle of the kitchen, in the middle of his dining room table, so that he could feed the cord or put up a spindle sander or whatever he had in his kitchen. And Matt's shop was literally his kitchen, and he actually did a lot of really cool things in that kitchen too, and he still does, by the way. But he just, Matt's kind of the silent but deadly type. He's one of those guys that he doesn't say much, but when you ask him, sit down, because he's going to tell you.
I've just thought of another little tip something important that I learned with the workshop, and it actually was the tool that kind of started off the workshop being the workshop, and that was my table saw. I went, and I think I've said this before, and Chris was like, nearly fell off his chair.
Yeah. No, but I understand. I understand why you did it, but it's not something I'd ever do. And we're good.
That's different ways of working. But when I first set up the workshop, it was the table saw was the heart of the workshop. And I know a lot of my American friends will be like, "Yeah, of course, table saw's the heart of the workshop,
backbone of it." Yep.
But for me, it's not at all. I went and bought the biggest table saw tabletop that I could afford at the time. And I plonked it right in the middle of the room so I get maximum in-feed, maximum out-feed. And I did that because that's what I thought I wanted. And I thought I wanted that because of what I'd seen and watched and read.
Mm-hmm. You simply didn't have, but you didn't. You simply didn't have the space for it.
Well, I did. I've got the space for it, but what I haven't got is the use for it. Because actually, if I move it across, then I've got ultimately infinite outfeed because I can feed out of the double doors because there's a set double doors directly behind that, which is another thing. Utilize the outdoor space. That's something in the new workshop.
Well, I'll be honest with you. The table saw that I have, I don't actually, in that context, I don't actually have room for it either. But the fact that it's so easily mobile makes it easy. And I built a portable / work top outfeed table for it that I can use. And so that's also very easy for me to put together. It's not a chore to set up my table saw, but with you in that space, I can imagine that after a while, it became more of a hindrance than it was something that was helping.
Exactly, because I took the side wing off, and then I took the sliding table off, and then I took the back extension off, and just got it as small as it could possibly be. And now it's just kind of pushed to one side because I don't do that much
flat work.
Material. Well, I do loads of flat work, but I don't do any ripping of sheets. If I've got to rip a sheet down, either I get my supplier to do it because I have to, because to transport it to get it in the workshop from the supplier's yard, or I use a track saw.
Okay.
So I only actually use my table saw for ripping really thin bits, and I don't need a big tabletop to rip thin.
It's like Jamie. I don't know. I don't know if Jamie even owns a table saw. I mean, because Jamie,
I do. Yeah,
but I'm sure it's not huge because
it is for full size table saw. It's one of the things that when I decided I wanted to do woodwork, I went and bought everything I thought I needed, and then quickly realize I didn't, and Richard's is gone.
He'll be back.
Yeah, it was one of the things I bought everything I thought I needed, and realized quickly that I didn't. So I've got Evolution Rage. I think it was done on review of Joe, and I think I probably used it twice, and it's in the in one of the sheds now, covered over.
I'm thinking actually, because knowing that you do mostly lathe work, mostly scroll saw work, and you do other stuff as well. I don't want to pigeonhole you into those two things, but for what you mostly do, you don't really have much of a. You could get away with a miter saw instead of a table saw with what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you could. I think you could probably just get away with a bandsaw with what you do, Jamie.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how straight of a cut you're looking for, because bandsaws vary as far as how accurate of a cut they can make. And if you're looking at a tabletop bandsaw, you're probably looking at less accuracy. And that's just my personal opinion. But hey, you go with the flow. Do what you do. That's all that matters. We have to let. We're getting on a bit, so we do have to do the Jamie thing.
Some of us are, Chris.
Yeah. Well. That was so wrong. It was entirely called for. It was entirely uncalled for. I'm not going to sit here.
We start this podcast and he bullies me. 4 years on, he's bullying you.
Oh my God. Anyway, Jamie, I mean, I'm not going to say save us, but please change the subject to something that is like unbearable as opposed to what I just heard. Go ahead. That's all yours, man.
Jamie's page.
That would be it. Yes, thank you.
Right. So, for those that don't know this, Sean Evely, he's been on a TV show called The Chop, Britain's Top Woodworker. He posted it over in the chat earlier on. He said that someone has actually uploaded the first full episode up to YouTube. But it's actually on Sky at the moment. If you want to go over to Sean Evely's YouTube channel, he posts regular videos about it and where it can be found and all that kind of good stuff.
Awesome. Congratulations too, Sean.
I think somebody's posted the Sky episode on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what he said. They've posted the full episode on YouTube. So if you can search for that, then good call.
Quick name of the show, take it down.
Name of the show again, Jamie?
The Chop. It's called The Chop, Britain's best. Is it Britain's top woodworker? Yeah, awesome. That's it. So yeah, it's actually not a bad show. It's funny because because it's run by or one of the hosts is a comedian. I think Sean's like the youngest one there. he kind of had a little bit of a dig at him and gave him a child's toolbox. I thought it was quite funny.
Sean's going to put them to shame now. That's just a dig that you're going to be sorry for. Anyway, go for it, Sean. Kill him, buddy.
Yeah, I thought that was quite funny. Obviously, we've got the my premieres coming out in 30 minutes. Caitlin's is coming out in 45. So on to my shout out. My shout out goes to Lewis, the Klondike Craftsman. He's got about 309 subscribers, is what I'm looking at here. He's a wood turner, amongst other things. He does some absolutely fantastic projects. He does a lot of hybrid bowls and things like that, vases, and his wood blank area is the size of some people's workshops, if I'm honest with you. So yeah, he's a nice guy as well. So go and show Lewis some support. The Klondike Craftsman.
Excellent, Richard.
I actually do have a shout out this week. Amazingly enough,
Prepared even.
I mean, obviously, Chris, you know I've got a shout out because you asked me before the show.
I had to put
what
the
it
link,
was,
which is in the description below. Thank you for the cue, Richard. Nice little segue.
Yeah, so I'm going to shout out a guy. It's actually a relatively new channel to me, but it's not a relatively new channel, judging by the size of it. And the guy's name is Rex Kruger. I think I got that right. He does a lot of hand tool. He's a hand tool woodworker. He works out of his basement. He's really down to earth, and he does a lot of kind of, you don't need expensive tools to do this sort of videos.
Awesome.
I think he actually, if I remember rightly, I sidetracked slightly, but his series, Woodworking for Humans, like for normal people. But the particular video that I really got sucked into his channel with, he does a lot of tool making as well, which was another reason I got sucked into his channel. But this is about a workbench, and it's called the Incredible English Joiner's Bench, and he makes a kind of a traditional English joiner's workbench, but it's not the sort of workbench that I think a lot of people are familiar with. We're going back, 1900, 1850 kind of era. Really solid workbench, and there's a lot of ideas from that I want to incorporate into my current workbench as a result of slightly changing what I'd use my workbench for. If that makes sense. Doing a lot of these windows.
I saw that video, and he built that video. That workbench, I believe he said, because he's British. But
he's an American guy.
Oh, he's an American guy. Okay,
he's an American dude.
See, I didn't pick up on that, but I just assumed because it was coming from you that he was British. But I mean, all right. And the fact that he's building a British workbench, I mean, my bad. Anyway, but he built that for under $100.
Yes, he did.
$100, and it's because he used basic pine timber, 4x4s, 2x10s, and 2x4s to build it, and it was incredibly strong. I mean, that's a good shout out, Richard, because I enjoyed that video. That was good.
Yeah, there are others in that kind of series as well. He does a whole load of clamping options for that bench and other benches where you don't even need a vise. It's all old school stuff. It's all really old like medieval era technology,
which is what I use, because I don't have a vise on my bench either. So I tend to use all those old school clamping kind of devices
because it works.
Yeah, it does. It didn't have to be, and it wasn't expensive. It's pretty easy. Awesome. Well, I'm going to give a shout out to a gentleman who probably doesn't need it, just because we're probably all familiar, and that's Mark Spagnolo, the Wood Whisperer. And I'll tell you why I dig this, because you guys know I'm a bit of a geek about finishing. He did a video on if you're ever in a project and you're looking to put a finish on a piece or stain on a piece, and this pertains mostly to stain, but the same kind of reaction is in this video that he gets with stain, you get with finish. He did a video on sanding end grain. If you plan on staining your project, and he came up with some pretty interesting results. And he went, from rough cut to table saw cut to sanded to this level, sanded to this level, sanded to this level, and then applied stain to each. And you're going to be surprised, and I think he was surprised at some of the results that he got. So if you have the opportunity and if you're looking to finish something and you want to do it correctly, or if you, well, I don't want to say correctly, if you want to do it a certain way, your way, whatever that vision is, then give that video a look, because it will help you do that, because it's always the hardest thing to do in woodworking. If you're trying to keep a stain constant throughout the entire project, meaning the top of the table has this color, the edge of the table has that same color, type of kind of, without having the end grain soak up all the stain and be like a dark black thing at the end of your table. He goes through and does a really nice job at explaining it. So if you're interested, check him out. Obviously, it's the Wood Whisperer. I believe he titled the video "End-Grained Sanding Test," and I think you'll be surprised at some of the results he comes up with, because we all assume some things, and one thing that we all assume turns out to be really wrong. And I know why, and I think Mark is educated enough to know why as well, but he leaves it up in the air for you to kind of figure it out. So if you have that chance, check it out. And if you want to know why, message me, and I'll tell you exactly why. So anyway, that's it.
Sweet.
It's cool. It's actually a cool video.
I'm not big on stains.
I presume you would seal it, wouldn't you? With start a sanding sealer.
Well, if you're going to seal it, I mean, you don't necessarily need to use a sanding sealer when you seal wood. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Jamie, the amount of times I've used a sanding sealer on a project I've built, I could count on one hand. I honestly don't. I mean, on the lathe and how you do things, I can see where that comes in really handy. But for furniture and things of that nature, you don't need a sanding sealer at all, especially if you plan on staining it. You don't want to use one if you're planning on staining it. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic, and we could talk for another 20 minutes about that. But anyway, yeah, we've gone on long enough. Exactly. Thank you, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if we're doing our aforementioned non-Patreon, Patreon free, because we don't do it, but after the party, because sometimes I know people have got live shows to or premieres to premiere in a little while, but yeah, I really don't know. I'm going to end this quite quickly, because Chris always tells me if I don't. So in that case, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Have a great week, everybody.